Welcome to the Intern Whisperer, the show all about the future of work.
So today's guest is Mark Frohnmayer, CEO and founder of Arcimoto. Welcome, Mark, to the Intern Whisperer. Very glad to have you here.
Well, Isabella and Caesar, thank you so much for having me on the show.
So we're going to just jump right into it. The first part of our show, it's all about, we talk about your business and what's going on with it and how did you get that idea. It's really a great place for you to showcase how you started it. The second part, we talk about the future of work and industry. So please share with our listeners about your educational background, work history, whatever you want to tell us about your startup story and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I played with Legos as a child quite a bit. And I think that was probably really my only real qualification for starting up an electric vehicle company, other than going to Berkeley and getting a degree in electrical engineering and computer science. But when I was in school and really growing up, I was very focused on computer programming. So I made, my folks got an Apple II when I was 7 years old, and I just sort of became entranced by the machine and learning how to self-taught programmer, became a game developer. Actually, for quite a few years, I worked in the commercial games business. Started a company in 2000, right around 2000, 2001, called Garage Games, to make game technology and to help people who wanted to build independent games bring their games to market. And then we sold that company in 2007. And that's really what provided the resources to start Arcimoto. Although at that time, I didn't have any idea that I would actually start an electric vehicle company. I went looking for an electric vehicle to buy. I wanted to buy an electric vehicle. I was at that point a bicycle commuter and had recently gotten a house. And I just realized there were times when I needed a vehicle, slightly larger vehicle than my bicycle, to get across town in a more sedentary way, or to go to, the home improvement store and pick up, home improvement project materials or whatever. And so Arcimoto really came from a sort of a consumer need, which is that I went looking for a vehicle and I couldn't find it. I went looking in the market I didn't want a full-size car. I wanted something that was much more human scale. I wanted something that was much more efficient. I wanted something that was affordable, so that if I adopted it, that it could help move the needle on the climate problem. And I was sort of amazed that in the year 2007, that there was no affordable, efficient, everyday electric vehicle in the marketplace that I could just go buy. And it wasn't until I saw a kit three-wheeled vehicle in a parade called the Bug E. And that was kind of the first light bulb moment of Arcimoto, was seeing this vehicle that sort of took from both categories. So much smaller and lighter weight than a car, but stable on the road, had some protection from the elements, and the drivers had big grins on their faces, and as they were just zipping down the road on battery power. And what that light bulb, I guess, really illuminated was this giant gap between the motorcycle and bicycle and the car. And just that there was really nothing in that space in the market to speak of. So that's really what started the ball rolling of Arcimoto.
I have so many questions based on what you just shared. So many. So you mentioned that they're, fairly lightweight. How much do they weigh?
So the production Arcimoto FUV weighs 1,300 pounds, which is about a third of the weight of a typical car. Our original target was for Arcimoto was 1,460. So we beat that, and of course then we set a new target, which is a sub 1,100 pound vehicle, which we aim to get to within a couple of years.
So when you say they zip, what is the fastest they can go? Because I'm wondering, is it like a kite? Is it going to be lifting off the ground? I'm concerned.
Well, the nice thing about having the battery is the battery really provides a lot of ballast for the vehicle. You've got this heavy battery pack that's right on the base plane of the vehicle, and then the drivetrain in the front. So that makes it, that helps keep it really planted on the road. But the Arcimoto is a motorcycle. It can go on all the roads. It has a top speed, we say, of 75 miles an hour. Although we've seen people out there push it a little bit beyond that. But it's designed for everyday trips. So if you think about the kind of the golf cart class, the neighborhood electric class of vehicles, where you're limited to 25 or 35 miles an hour, that really locks you into, just sort of your neighborhood. What the Arcimoto lets you do is get on the higher speed expressways or the large avenues that take you all through the community. And we see that as an important characteristic for something that's going to sort of be a real everyday solution for the wide range of everyday trips.
So how does it protect the driver? Because I would think that vehicles have to have some kind of a cage around the people in a way.
You have a space frame around you that has so it actually, the roof passes the roof crush test for cars. You have seat belts, two 3-point seat belts for both passengers. But you got to also recognize that you are a much smaller vehicle than the typical vehicles around you. So the real advantage of the Arcimoto being that from within the class of motorcycle type vehicles is that you sit up actually higher than you would in a typical car. You actually sit up about the height that you would in a crossover SUV, which gives you a lot of visibility of the road. And the big challenge with small vehicles is just that they're often hard for people to see. And so having a more elevated position for the occupants means that you're easier to see on the road.
Yeah, I can see that would be something that was a concern. So you've really thought through quite a bit of this, and I'm thinking of vehicles because it's a little bit reminiscent when I've seen it, and I've asked Caesar to pull up some pictures so we can do some screen sharing here while we're on it and show off all of this great stuff that you have that you're telling our listeners about. But I would think that you've thought through, since you're an engineer. My dad was an engineer. I know how they're wired usually, and they go, okay, what if, and you think of all of the problems to make it work. So it can't necessarily lift off the ground. You did mention one that was about, the size of it. It reminds me a little bit of like a golf cart, but it's larger than a golf cart, and I'm sure faster than a golf cart too, because you said it can go 75.
You can, yeah, and that was really, the first 7 years of Arcimoto was really all about iterating to find the right idea. We started with a 3-wheeled kit vehicle, 2 wheels in front, 1 wheel in back. But we actually went through 8 distinct new product concept vehicles that we built, all the way into functioning prototypes to get to what was ultimately the right idea. And it was really all about identifying, what is it that the everyday driver needs? What are sort of the utility needs of the everyday driver? It needed to carry 2 people. The first several vehicles we built were 1-seaters. And when we put them in front of potential customers, they said, I've got to be able to carry somebody else. And you think about it, you get this new cool electric vehicle. Kind of the first thing you want to do is take a friend for a ride, or take your partner for a ride, or go out with somebody. And so even though most of us drive alone most of the time, having the ability to carry somebody else comfortably is really a requirement for the mass market. And that balance of being able to carry a lot of stuff. So I'm 6'4", I'm kind of our sizing dummy for the vehicle. I fit very comfortably front seat and back seat. And then you can carry, a few bags of groceries in the back as well. That ability to carry a lot of stuff on a very small platform that is lightweight, maneuverable, that was really what took us. It took years of experimentation to get the right formula for just the basic architecture of the vehicle. And that's, it's the foundation of our intellectual property portfolio, is really just a new vehicle architecture.
That's really, really good stuff. So Caesar, you can go ahead and share the screen. I'm not sharing, so you can do that with no problem. Just hit share screen and have your pictures up and we'll talk about those. So there's a back seat. Is it safe? Does it pass the safety standards for children to be in also? Are there seat belts?
So there are seat belts. We have a recommendation about sort of you've got to be of a minimum height so that
Okay.
you can touch the floor, and that you're, it's sort of like you got to be this height to ride this ride. And then because it is a motorcycle, there are certain state regulations that govern whether children can be on the back of a motorcycle. And so we encourage, obviously, folks to follow the laws in their jurisdiction.
So our viewers can definitely see this. Does it have a trunk also? I would think
Yeah,
if it's got
yeah.
back seats.
What you've got on the screen right now is a vehicle that we call the Deliverator, which is our it's more of a utility vehicle. It's for fleets. It's for last mile delivery. So in this case, this one doesn't have a back seat. That whole back half of the vehicle is stored. It's about 23 cubic feet of storage, and that's for it's for delivery of groceries. As you know, during the pandemic, grocery delivery has kind of gone to the moon. Same thing with meal delivery and small parcels as well. The Deliverator also is just a very good general purpose fleet vehicle for a wide range of fleet type missions.
Go ahead, Caesar, and pull up another picture while we're going through this. I chose that one because it was Wahlburgers, and I've had their burgers, and I like them very much. Sadly, they are no longer here in Orlando, so it's disappointing. Yeah.
That was actually one of our very first Deliverators. Went to the new Wahlburgers franchise in Key West. So the Deliverator makes a very good branding platform as well as a delivery vehicle. And so this one is an image of the Fun Utility vehicle. This is our flagship consumer product. So seats two comfortably front and back. And again, you've got 2 seat belts for both passengers. So it's kind of it aims to be roughly equivalent to having a 4-point harness, but much easier to get in and out of.
Okay, so when you're saying front and back, it's like I would be the driver, but whoever I'm taking with me is behind me, right? So they're not beside me like in a car, they're behind me.
Yeah, and that's partly because of, it's really in order to get the vehicle to have a very small footprint, which makes it very easy to park and very maneuverable, is that you want to bring, if you're going to have a narrower track width, you want to have the passengers on the center line of the vehicle rather than side by side. So you sit more like you would on a motorcycle, which is front and back, rather than a car, which is typically side by side.
Yeah, I see that now too. So does it have, because if it's raining, do I have flaps or something I can put around myself?
Yeah, like you think about it like a Jeep. If you've got a nice day, you ride it open. We have half doors that are almost ready to ship out. We've got a few different options for protection from the elements, and we've got one that's just a very simple kind of lap cover that protects you from spray on the road and protects your lap. I mean, a lot of the time, if you've got the right apparel on to be outside at all, you stay very dry in the FUV. And then down the road, we see the market need for more of a fully enclosed automotive styled doors that you'd be able to add on.
And I see it's got headlights, obviously, and all of that. So once you said a motorcycle, I was going, okay, I can definitely see it. But like the motorcycles that really have, I guess, a sidecar, because those are like the tricycle ones that are like this, right?
Yeah, and there's a real advantage to having 2 wheels in front on a 3-wheeler versus having 1 in front and 2 in back. The drive system in the Arcimoto is on the front wheels, so it has 1 motor for each of the 2 front wheels. So your driving, your steering, and your braking all happens on those front wheels, which is a much more stable configuration than if you have 1 wheel in front and 2 wheels in back, which is what you would have if you had a sidecar on a typical motorcycle, or if you had kind of one of the old school trikes.
How many images do you have, Caesar? Is it like 3? You have one more?
I have one more. I have one more.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like the lights were red. So are they standard white lights in the front, the headlights?
Yeah, you get two headlights in the front, and then some marker lights that are orange
Ah, okay. Okay.
to improve visibility of the vehicle.
Yeah, I'm loving this. Okay, so this one's super cool too. I love your logo. So since we're looking at this, before you start talking about the car, tell me about the logo. Where did this name come from? And it looks like it's an angel. I'm not sure.
It's the name Arcimoto. I was looking for a name that started with the letter A, because a vehicle company is hard enough that you might as well sort at the top of the list. I wanted something that evoked electricity and mobility. So ARC originally represented electricity, and then moto is drive. And then every manufacturer under the sun said they were going to do electrics. So ARC became archetype, or the arc of the future. So the brand Arcimoto means future I drive.
Ah, very nice. And when I was pondering without doing any research on it, I was actually sitting here thinking of the very same thing. I'm thinking an arc like in electricity, how it arcs across. And then motor, I was going, okay, that's got to be motor. So I could see it.
What I realized also is you really don't want you don't want any electric arcs in an electric vehicle. That's arcing is actually a bad thing. So that's where it switched more to yeah.
And Arcimoto sounds Japanese anyway, too.
It's got a Japanese pronunciation. It has the Italian pronunciation is Arcimoto, and then there's the dyslexic pronunciation as well.
Because you mentioned that you started with games, I find that really intriguing because I have a game also. I have a game and video company aside from this one. But Japanese, I am so amazed with all of their innovation, and I love their anime and everything that they do. So I was fully expecting that was going to be your backstory. And I was going, no, I don't even want to look it up. I want to be surprised when you share it so I could be genuinely going, okay, was this right? So super cool. So tell us about this vehicle. It looks similar to the Wahlburgers one, I'm going to say.
This is actually our very first Deliverator pilot vehicle, which we put on the road in March of last year. And again, the whole purpose of the Deliverator is, and we're seeing the massive shift of delivery of goods to just in time, and a push towards electrification. And this is everyone from Amazon to Grubhub to Uber Eats to your grocery store.
Yeah, it's not going to work for Lyft or Uber though when you're carrying people, but
it's that the rideshare vehicle for people would be a different variant.
Yeah, it sure would be.
This is targeted at last mile delivery.
I see that NASDAQ logo on the bottom. I was in NASDAQ's Milestone Maker program. So I'm curious, did you go through their program, or because you're on the stock exchange? What?
I'm not familiar with that program, but Arcimoto is a publicly listed company where FUV is both the name of our flagship product, the fun utility vehicle, and our ticker on NASDAQ.
Very nice, very nice. So a little shout out to the NASDAQ people. Okay, well, since there was another question I had, and we had covered most of them, the safety ones were the ones that I was really interested in. But you plug this in, how long does the energy last on it?
It's got a 100-mile city driving range. So yeah, and you think about the fact that people are driving on average about 30 miles a day. So the basic model is you plug it in when you get home, and every morning you've got a full tank. There will certainly be outliers, but for just the vast majority of everyday trips, plenty of juice.
Yeah. How much does it go for? What's the ballpark range?
The starting price is $17,900. As we achieve true mass production, we want to continue to make it more affordable. And really, affordability has been sort of the point all along. If your only options are very expensive electric cars, then that just ices out a whole the vast majority of the market. And so the thought behind Arcimoto is how can we, in the most environmentally efficient way possible, in the most affordable way possible, solve the wide majority of everyday trips. And that's really what the platform and company are all about.
I could see this having such huge global appeal because I've been to many third world countries like the Dominican Republic, and I don't know if anybody else considers it third world, but it was to me. And they were riding around on motorcycles and they would have, I don't know, like another person right behind them. This would be so much more, I would think they'd say even luxurious, but they would truly, I think, benefit from it. And I see it like things like this, like in the Keys, so you should be going like gangbusters, I would think.
Our very first rental operation is open in Key West. And it really is a fantastic island destination vehicle. It's also a fantastic New York City vehicle. I mean, it's just because it can get through traffic so much more easily than a car, and you can park it so much more easily than a car. It makes for a really, one of the worst parts of driving is dealing with traffic and parking. So when you can help make those problems better, it really has a much wider potential. But the truth is that this platform, it really does hit. I mean, all you got to do is stand on a busy street corner watching the cars go by, and it's just one person, and 4,000 pounds of steel that take up, like 100 square feet of space, one after another. So right sizing that footprint has a lot of potential downstream benefit.
Oh my God, I just kind of reimagine what parking would be like in so many places. And I think that people would be more cautious, probably in this vehicle than they would be in a regular size one because they're paying attention, I would think more.
You're just so much, it really does bring you into a state of presence and awareness when you drive it. You're right in the middle of the experience. You're in the world. You can see what's going on around you. And it is a very different experience than driving a car.
Does it have a heater if it's cold outside?
It's got a heater. It's got heated seats and heated hand grips. So as long as you're appropriately dressed to be outside, you're going to stay warm.
Yeah, I like this very much. So I could see it being a parent giving this to their child as maybe a first car to make them more aware of what's going on and a way to help make sure that they're not maybe going out drinking and driving, things like that. The huge benefits in other areas that, people may not have thought about. So super cool.
You certainly won't have your kid taking 5 other teenagers around in the FUV, hopefully.
Yeah, that is very well. Yeah, they're not going to fit in there. Just 2 people in there. Okay, so your mission, why? I mean, obviously you've really driven that one home that you wanted to create something that was going to be more economical and also not going to be taking advantage of the resources that we have in our planet and our world. But you mentioned a number of things, pricing and making sure that there's lack of we're not polluting our environment, but is there anything else in this when you were thinking about your mission that you wanted to be able to bring to the world? I think that part of being a startup is that you want to leave the world a better place in some way and, make your mark.
Absolutely. No, I mean, the Arcimoto's mission is to catalyze the shift to a sustainable transportation system. We don't believe that will happen until the solutions are affordable. And we think that a big piece of that puzzle for the vehicles that we drive around is how much material and how much space do they take up. So it is, I think it definitely includes electrification. So the electric drive is 3 times as efficient as a gas-powered engine and has 0 tailpipe emissions. But electric drive it's sort of necessary, but not sufficient. It's the Arcimoto says, let's really think about, how much other stuff do we need to take around with us everywhere we go? And for me, 200-pound guy on a good day, carrying 4,000 extra pounds of metal that are highly refined, extractive resources in order to go get a cup of coffee is just insane. And when you multiply that times everybody, that's what everybody is doing,
Right.
then that's why we end up paving over basically half of our urban landscape, half paved over to move and park cars. And you just think about what would the world be like? What would our cities be like if we had more human scale transportation solutions? I think they'd be a lot better. And that's the vision that Arcimoto is pushing towards.
How to put these type of, if you didn't have it at your home, and obviously you need to have some charging stations around. I live in Orlando, Florida, over at Winter Park, which is just a hop and a skip away. We have charging stations at the campus, the college that I went to. I was also told by Glenn, who is, I don't know if he's considered a partner, I'm not really sure, but that's how I got to you, is through Glenn, who's part of the Avalon Park Innovation Group. I know he mentioned that you guys have a fleet of them here in Orlando, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you. What were you just going to say about Glenn?
Glenn had a consulting business called EV Transports, and we're now working with him really to help bring Arcimoto to Florida in a big way.
Yeah, and he had shared that this is actually in the downtown Orlando area. So I was trying to figure out where it is. I don't know if you know or not, but I wanted to go check them out or see if they were in Winter Park.
Well, we're actually going to be in Daytona for Bike Week starting Friday of this week, so Friday, March 5th.
My brother is a big biker and he lives right over there. So are you going to have a booth or something somewhere?
So we've teamed up. We have teamed up with Corbin Pacific. They make our seats, and we're working with them on a new vehicle project called the Roadster, which is the Arcimoto without a cage. So it's a much more motorcycle-like version of the Arcimoto platform. And so we'll actually be at the Corbin store during Bike Week, and they're right down there near the promenade, is my understanding.
Okay, well, I'm going to go visit my brother this upcoming weekend so I can go find one of the locations. I'm pretty sure it's going to be an easy Google search over there. So, hey, Caesar, you can go ahead and take it down, or if you find something else that you want to share, feel free. All right, so we covered a lot of those things. Fun utility vehicle, FUV. Did you think of that? Is that your idea there too?
I did not. It was actually a couple of the guys on our team. We often led with sustainability when we were talking about Arcimoto, and this is for years. Just the need to move to a sustainable transportation system, how efficient our vehicles were. But what people kept saying over and over and over again when they had a chance to drive was just how much fun they were. People get out of the driver's seat saying, "This is the most fun thing I've ever driven." They drive and yelp with excitement. And so this is John Freese and Jeremy Bronson this is right when we were making our product video back in 2016, and they were kind of convincing at the end of the night and said, this is our answer to the SUV. So this thing, we need to lead with fun. This thing is so much fun. We shouldn't, we shouldn't run away from it. We should just lead with it. And so that was really, where the fun utility vehicle was born, is that, we think that the world needs a lot fewer SUVs and a lot more FUVs.
So what year was that then?
This was 2016. So
so not that long ago.
No, we had put our looks like, works like prototypes on the road, and we were gearing up to go public in order to build out the factory and actually begin production.
Very interesting. So one of the other questions, Caesar did some really good research here, and he found that there was the California Clean Fuel Reward of $1,500 to help offset the purchase of that. Is that for every person that lives in California? How does that work? Do you know?
So if you live in California, you buy an Arcimoto, you get $1,500 off. We're working with a coalition of partners to expand the federal tax credit so that it applies to Arcimoto vehicles as well. And again, that all just comes back to, if the solution is more affordable. I mean, we really see this as a transportation equity issue, like that clean solutions should not just be for the well-to-do, but should actually be practical and affordable for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's so that we are very glad that that California is taking a leadership role. The state of Oregon has a $2,500 incentive that applies to the Arcimoto. You know, if you start to add that, if the federal government jumps in with a piece of that, then suddenly, you know, you're talking about something that could be in the $12,000 to $15,000 price range, depending on
Yeah,
where.
it's so affordable too. So affordable. Well, I really, really like that quite a bit. Let me see if there's anything, Caesar, I know that I covered all of these questions in our first half, but I pretty much monopolized the conversation. What would you like to ask? Is there something that you have? And if not, that's okay.
Yeah, you probably mentioned it, but what plans does he have to? What plan do you have to extend the incentive program like nationally? Because I know it's in California right now, and Oregon hasn't. So what are you trying to do, like, to expand in some sort of way?
Well, we're actively lobbying in a number of states where we have a lot of pre-order customers. So that includes Florida and Washington and a few others, to make sure that we're part of whatever clean vehicle programs that they have, to make sure that our customers can easily register and license their vehicles. And that's really just part of being a new manufacturer of a new kind of vehicle. It's just a lot of education work with the powers that be to make sure that there's an easy path for our customers.
Yeah, that makes really good sense. So we're going to take just a minute to take a brief pause for our sponsor.
The Intern Whisperer is brought to you by Cat5 Studios, who help you create games and videos for your training and marketing needs that are out of this world. Visit Cat5 Studios for more information to learn how Cat5 Studios can help your business. Thank you, Cat5 Studios.
So back to our show where we focus on the future of work, industry forecasts, and an internship for employers. So I'm going to save that tip for a little bit later in the show here. So when I was doing some research, I found that the International Energy Agency projects that the global number of battery-powered and hybrid vehicles could increase from just over 5 million to nearly 140 million by 2030. That is crazy to me. I don't know how many cars are sold in the world, but I'm sitting here thinking that's a lot of vehicles.
Well, right around 100 million cars are sold every year, if you can believe it.
Wow.
And one of the again, the real sort of advantages of the Arcimoto is that it's just a much smaller vehicle, and where that really makes a difference are things like batteries and electric motors, where you have a real supply chain constraint. And the EV market right now is going to be held back by the availability of raw materials for batteries. The Arcimoto has a battery that's about a quarter of the size of a typical electric car battery, which means you can build 4 Arcimotos with the same amount of material that you can build 1 electric car.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
If you think that electric car is probably just going to be used for one person to drive around and get a cup of coffee, it makes a lot more sense to build more small vehicles than fewer, much larger vehicles.
So if you can take one made car right now, one car that we have, and make 4 Arcimotos, I would think if I was looking at parking spaces, I'm going to go back to what we were talking about earlier, is the standard parking spaces probably could fit 3, I would think.
You can park 3 Arcimotos in 1 parallel parking spot.
That is crazy.
Which also means that you can park it in places where you wouldn't ever be able to park a car. I mean, you get the little triangles in the parking lot that you can't fit a car in. That's perfect for an Arcimoto. You just end up being able to find, we call this feature Rockstar Parking Come Standard, because you just get great parking wherever you go.
Yeah, but it's a regular tire also, right? It's not like the little donut size.
They're narrow, sort of the narrowest, most efficient car tires that we could find.
Oh, gosh, I'm so excited. I really want to go see one now. And I'm assuming that people can test drive them in wherever these are, they are currently located.
Typically, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we have rental as our market entry model, is that, if you're in a nice place where they're available for rent, you can rent one and drive it around and experience it for yourself. And then we also offer test drives at various events, factory tours when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, and then we've got once we're out of the pandemic proper, then that's when we'll resume sort of the nationwide tour of test drives.
Mm-hmm. I don't think this is a competitor, but I've seen Zip cars. I know that they're electric cars also. And so with that said, I know that they've got a couple of charging stations throughout in Winter Park. I honestly don't see them in Orlando, so I'm not sure where they're keeping them. If it's the Orlando city government, then, they've got them tucked away where it's not open and accessible to the public. But I want to go back to this question. To create charging stations, typically when you have gas stations, you have to dig up the ground, put a big thing in the ground, a bladder, if you will, whatever, a tank to hold the gas and all of that. It can't be nearly as disruptive. It's got to be like just laying a charge, right? An electric cable.
And really the infrastructure for electric vehicle charging is really already here. It's the electrical grid is the bulk of the infrastructure that you need to fuel electric vehicles. The charging stations are really sort of, very fancy plugs.
They are. Do you see having something that's going to be solar powered on the vehicle also?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we've had a lot of customers request a solar roof option where you have solar power on the roof that's trickle charging the battery. That's something that we see down the road. And then, you could obviously plug it into a battery bank that's being powered by solar as well.
Yeah, I've seen even people have backpacks that are solar charged for their phones. So I can easily see how you could adapt that particular need, that the whole vehicle could maybe be that charging station, essentially. Is there any type of concern health-wise of how electricity interacts with people, like, if they have pacemakers or whatever?
So one of the pieces that we had to go through was electromagnetic interference testing,
Right.
to actually have the vehicle on the market. So we did a bunch of EMC testing as part of our certification process.
Yeah, I would think that would be a big part of it. And then do you see this being something that sounds like a child could drive it earlier than 16, but certainly you have to have a license to be able to drive on the road. I mean, I get that part of it. But you said that it had a handle, kind of like I think how bikes do.
It's got handlebars, and it's very easy to learn how to operate. It does require a license to operate it on the road. So I definitely see that someday down the road we'll make something that's more in the bicycle / scooter class of vehicles that wouldn't require a license. But this one,
yeah, they have plenty of those little scooters. They're all the way downtown, and I see kids driving them just as easily as like teenagers and whatnot. So I could see it would have a big appeal for them also. So the next statistic that I pulled up is at the rate that electric vehicles will begin to cost the same as their fossil fuel counterparts between 2025 and 2029. Depending on the vehicle type, these just-in-time are easy targets. But in 2030, Bloomberg predicts that there's 26 million electric vehicles will be sold annually, representing 28% of the world's new cars sold. So when I look at that and I'm thinking about 2030, that's, it sounds so far away, but you're already bringing these out into the market. And we should be seeing 28%. I mean, we're looking at a quarter of the vehicles out in the world.
Well, I actually think it's going to come faster than that. I think
Yeah.
the cost is coming down on batteries. The push on every governmental level out there to really address climate change and carbon emissions. I would not be surprised if half the vehicles sold in 2030 are electric.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I would easily see that, yeah. I can see this being a really big piece of legislation, but also something that I would hope both Democrats and Republicans would get behind regardless of their political parties. But I think one party might prefer it over the others, so we'll see how that all plays out. What do you think that the future of the industry looks like, 5 to 10 years from now? And we've already talked about it, like 2030, just from these statistics, but do you think that these are like spot on or,
I think they're going to be, well, and it's very hard to predict because given the pace of change and the level of disruption that's happening, there are the push to self-driving vehicles, I think will bear real fruit in that time frame. So we'll have likely multiple providers of autonomous vehicle solutions that can drive you where you want to go or that can show up when you need a vehicle. And that's really key for a number of reasons. Obviously, safety on the road is huge, but also the ability to utilize a vehicle at a much higher rate than a car is typically used today. So vehicles today are parked 95% of their lives. They're rusting and depreciating and costing you money and insurance and all the rest. And so, but if you have a vehicle that can drive itself, then it's much easier to use that as part of a service of vehicles. And so if we can get to the point where we're cranking out, tens of millions of self-driving cars every year, you actually need many fewer of them to serve the vehicle riding public, right? Maybe somewhere like a tenth of the number of vehicles needed or a fifth. So if today we've got one car for every man, woman, and child in America, like something like 300 million cars on the road.
That's crazy.
Crazy. And then
Yeah.
we've got 6 parking spaces for every car. So if you think about a world where you've got whatever vehicle you need can show up on demand that you can either drive or that can take you where you need to go. I think in the year 2030, we could have produced enough of those vehicles to serve 80% of the transportation needs of the public in the United States.
I was talking with my dad about your particular product, and because he was a mechanical engineer, he was in the defense industry. And so I was talking with him about cars and just transportation, and he said this is what he thinks is that because so many people have gone to remote work and they're now working from home, there will be obviously less need for having vehicles. More people may move into the downtown areas, and again, cost alone for parking is ridiculous in a downtown area. So he feels that what will happen is the government's going to come in and potentially buy cars back from people. And then if they need a vehicle, they will, like something larger than what you're providing as a solution, they would turn around and rent them from the government instead. So now the government becomes the world's largest Hertz dealership, I guess, if you will.
Interesting. Well, that's the thing. If I want a pickup truck, I don't usually need a pickup truck.
No, you might rent it.
Once in a while, I need to go pick up a yard of dirt or something like that. That's when you'd want to rent it, and you'd want to have it be very convenient on an app that just sort of shows up when you need it, and then you're done with it, and off it goes onto its next mission. So that whether it's a government-owned fleet, I mean, we can certainly see instances where, and we're talking with mass transit providers who are looking at ways where they're really figuring out that they're not in the bus business, they're in the mobility business.
Right.
And so, in a lot of cases, you have a bus route that's driven empty, many hours out of the day. then we ask, are there more efficient ways, both in terms of cost and energy, that you can solve the mobility problems for people that bus serves? And that's, I think that begins to speak to the role of government in this next phase. So does transport become like a publicly owned utility? Is it an arm of government? Is it private enterprise where you've got multiple networks of robo taxis out duking it out for the lowest fare? Hard to say at this point what the real winner is going to be. The main argument that Arcimoto is making is that whoever is running that fleet, they should notice the fact that 80 to 85% of the trips just have one person in them, and get vehicles that are appropriately sized for that problem.
When I drive around, I always notice that there's a 2-lane road. If you have, 2 or more people in your car, then, you can zip down. So that one person, you're absolutely spot on. I actually noticed that quite a bit. Secondly, one of the things that you posed another question when we were talking about this is, can it tow anything? Is it possible that one of these vehicles can tow like a small jet ski, if you will, something of that size?
So we have
a little trailer.
We've created an attachment that we call, and this is just a prototype, we call the Arcimoto, that can tow a motorcycle trailer. And so you could definitely see the potential for carrying a lot more gear, or having a utility trailer for certain types of trips.
Yeah, like for the person that wants to be mowing yards in the future still, it could put his little lawnmower in there and everything.
A green landscaping company would have the electric lawnmower on the electric, the trailer being pulled by the electric Arcimoto.
Yeah, that would be super cute. So I made a list of some of the car manufacturers that were coming around to what you're doing here. Ford, Volvo, Jaguar, Kia, and I have a Kia Sportage. So, I found that all really interesting. They all seem to be getting behind this as a movement, whether it's more of the higher end cars. Do you think it's going to be something that, and I know it's not specific to what you're doing here, but I feel like there's going to be this place where car manufacturers are probably going to still merge together, and there might be just like 1 or 2 really luxury cars like Jaguar, and then there might be people drive trucks. When I was also doing research, it was like people either want trucks or they want just a regular car. So Ford had an article out, I think it was last year I read, where they were actually eliminating some of the vehicles that they've offered in the stores. And so it was going to be trucks as well as I think it was going to be a Ford Focus. I think maybe it's a little bit larger car, but do you think that they're all going to be downsizing to find this solution of providing something that's going to be a good footprint on our world?
I think it is going to be interesting to see what happens to the legacy car makers in the next decade. They've got it's a very difficult transition to move from building internal combustion engine vehicles to building electric vehicles. And we know that that's a very difficult transition because the major OEMs have been talking about it for decades now and still haven't pulled it off. You've got Tesla, who's been working out there for 17 years, has an absolutely dominant position in the electric vehicle industry. And really none of the major OEMs that started in gas-powered vehicles have come anywhere close. And it's sort of a classic innovator's dilemma problem. If you're familiar with the work of Clayton Christensen, is that you have, on the one hand, you've got this new electric vehicle idea, and then you've got 99% of your business being driven by internal combustion. And the real advertising push behind the electric vehicle is that the old products suck. They're noisy, they're pollutive, they're inefficient, bad for the planet. And so if that's your message, I mean, it's very easy for Tesla to send that message. because they're not reliant on their old product line to drive forward. And so I think that's been one of the main factors that's prevented that transition. And also EVs are a real technology puzzle. When you think about connected, autonomous, ultra efficient electric vehicles, it really doesn't play to the strengths of the incumbent players and the incumbent business models. So I think there will be a time period where it's in this transition where it may be very difficult for some of the existing players to survive that jump.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Because I can see how this would also impact a lot of the other, I guess, transportation or services that are part of it. So body work, right? You know, if you're going to have smaller cars, you don't need to have big giant body shops anymore. You can obviously save a lot more money. I guess these types of electric cars, they're lighter weight and everything. The maintenance on them should be a lot less also. And so that impacts probably, I would think, mechanics, and they're going to have to skill up in different ways there so they know how to take care of the cars, right? So I can see it impacting a lot of the touch points of what we are typically used to in our present world.
Well, if you think about cars that can drive themselves, you think about every job that is driving.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge piece of the workforce.
Have
And
you ever been in a car where it drives you, the self-driving cars?
yeah, no, well, my mom has a Tesla, so
Really?
I've driven, I had that car drive me at various points.
Did you, I'm just
but-
curious, did you feel safe?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Really?
You get very used to it very quickly. You're like, oh, this. I mean, when you're in a plane, you typically you don't think about having to be at the controls,
Mhm.
and so this is ultimately you end up feeling a lot safer. I think we will end up feeling a lot safer when all the vehicles are being driven by computers than when they're being driven by, distracted drivers trying to get one more tweet out.
Well, yeah, now I would definitely I would definitely agree with you on that one. But I think that there's this one side of me, I think I'm super controlling now is where I'm realizing it. I feel safer driving it myself or with another human driving it than a car that is driving and I don't have, I feel like any control. So that's the scary thing for me right now. Yeah. They'll have to make them super, super safe for me to be able to jump into one. Maybe if it's just going around the track and
Well,
I don't know.
anytime you're feeling lethargic or you're falling asleep as you're driving, that's when you immediately realize you'd much rather have a very alert computer.
Okay, your logic makes perfect sense. Yes. I am totally on point with that one now. Yeah. So let's switch over to what would it be like for a student to intern at Arcimoto? And I'm not sure what capacity it could be. I'm sure it could be in design, it could be in marketing, but what do you think that would look like? Because before we got on here, you had mentioned that you were pairing up an intern with one of your employees.
We're in the initial formation process of a true internship program. But we had recently a gentleman out there just say, I really want to intern at your company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up creating a program of one so that we could bring him on board. But a lot of that was just about making sure that it was going to be a worthwhile experience for
Right.
both the intern and for the company.
Mhm.
And a lot of that had to do with finding the right person to pair them up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does have to be somebody that likes to mentor, wants to mentor, enjoys being able to invest in another person because they find it
Yep.
rewarding, right? Yeah.
Hugely important.
Yeah. So what internship, well, you've already answered that one. What's the best piece of mentoring advice that you've received, and who was a mentor in your life that you might want to give a shout out to? So it's, can be one, both, either of those.
I think probably the mentor that I'd give a lot of give a shout out to is a former business partner of mine by the name of Jeff Tennell, who really took me to startup school. And I think Jeff was always adamant that we work on things that we were passionate about, and also taught me to be ever mindful of cash on hand, and don't quit your day job until you figured out a good place to land. And those have definitely stuck with me. But I've got sort of countless teachers out there who've really helped point the way.
That is true. I know I've said that so many times too. Don't give up that day job until you actually are making the same amount of money. So it's a smooth transition. It is hard. Startup world is incredibly hard. So how can our listeners find you? How can they contact you? All of that, social channels, whatever you wish to share.
Yeah, we're at Arcimoto on Twitter and Facebook. info@arcimoto.com is our main inbound email line. And the website is www.arcimoto.com.
Very nice. So I'm going to wrap up the show with an intern tip for our employers. So today's intern whisperer tip is the Department of Labor has 7 criteria for unpaid internships. And the first one of those 7 is that there is no promise to be paid. So as long as you make that disclaimer up front, you are going to be compliant out of one of those 7 criteria. And so this is really more for our employees, but it's also good for interns to know what those 7 criteria are. So they go into the internship with their eyes wide open. Well, Mark, I want to tell you, thank you so much for being a guest. I totally have enjoyed spending time with you. I learned so much. I love your logo. I think your shirt is super cool. If there's a way to win one, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go follow you on all of your social channels. I'm going to make comments. And I am going to, I don't know, are you coming over here to Florida? Is there a chance to meet you?
I have no travel plans at the moment. The one guy on our team who is vaccinated is the one making the trip out there for this show. But I imagine I'll be making the rounds at some point once we're through this crazy pandemic.
Okay. Well, thank you again.